if Hezbollah continues to do what they've been doing for the past 20 years, firing rockets into Israel, don't worry about it. Just ignore that. I mean, that's how this all looks to the Israelis. I know nobody wants to think about how the Israelis actually are looking at this deal right now because, again, because of Netanyahu's horrific policies. But right now you have an American administration saying if you get attacked by Israel or if you get attacked by Hezbollah, which they do all the time, they fire rockets into Israel all the time, don't do anything. Somebody fired a rocket into, like, Texas would be in Mexico City by nightfall. So that's how the Israelis are thinking when they hear us saying, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. They have the Israeli opinion is, I mean, I think something like 11% of Israelis think they won this war. I mean, a catastrophic failure for Netanyahu. But now the real problem is, by going in with the United States, not once but twice, they thought that would be it. We would deliver the coup de grace to Iran. We would cut the head off the snake for them, as they put it, one of their euphemisms. Instead, what we've done is placed a pair of handcuffs on the Israelis. They feel like they have forfeited their sovereignty and their strategic autonomy, which for them is the greatest danger, right? The United States should not be able to dictate terms of how Israel can respond to national security threats. And that's exactly what we're doing now. And Donald Trump is very outspoken. I mean, he's called Netanyahu an effing idiot. He said that, you know, I call the shots. I'm the guy in charge. Strategic disaster, Joe, is the phrase I keep hearing from Israeli national security analysts and hawks. Nobody is under any illusions that this war has not only not gone the way they wanted, but has possibly put Israel in an impossible bind right now.
So Joe just mentioned the latest piece from the editorial board of the New York Post. It's with Strait of Hormuz held hostage, Trump's Iran deal is worse than Obama's. And in it, the editorial board blasts Trump for allowing Iran to be able to dictate the terms of the strait, writing in part this: why would opening the door for administration of a previously free international waterway even be part of this agreement? How is this in any way the unconditional surrender Trump described? The Post argues, quote, the rest of the 14-point plan is almost entirely about what Iran gets: immediate sanctions relief on exported oil, protection of Hezbollah from Israeli attack, and the possibility of a $300 billion reconstruction fund if all goes well with the next round of talks. No mention of Iran reining in its terror proxies in Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen. No restriction on conventional weapons. No mechanism to surrender the enriched uranium it has already created. The Post editorial board then writes, the president hasn't just moved the goalposts, he's changed the sport, the venue, and the rules simply to declare a win. And, Caddy, we see even over this weekend Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz. Whether they closed it or not, they certainly are projecting the ability to do so or to menace ships at minimum coming through there. But this editorial is going to land very hard at the White House. First of all, we know that President Trump cares deeply, but the New York Post thinks, and Rupert Murdoch's editorial board. He also cares very deeply about the Obama comparison. I have reported, others as well in recent weeks, a lot of this, what we've seen play out in this stage of the war, is him being fueled by a belief to get a better deal than Obama. And right now, even his own allies are saying he took one that's worse.
Yeah, the criticism of Obama derangement syndrome falls hard for Donald Trump. And it is interesting to see the New York Post being this blunt. The Wall Street Journal, of course, has been pushing for a much harder line from the White House, for a more interventionist end to this war, wanting them to go further than they have done from the Pentagon. And now we hear the New York Post. Maybe they're thinking, look, the Wall Street Journal hasn't managed to get the message through. Perhaps the New York Post will get the message through. It was very interesting, David, listening to Kareem Sajapur over the course of the weekend, saying what this memorandum of understanding is effectively doing is Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff thinking, well, we couldn't bomb them, so we're going to bribe them. And there's just this fundamental misunderstanding of the regime and its intentions. And they would see foreign capital, $300 billion investment, the offer of shiny new condos or whatever it's going to go to, is a kind of a Trojan horse that opens up their country and opens up their population, which is precisely what they don't want, because they stay in power when the country and the population is under the heel of their boot.
Kareem Sedgwickpour, who you mentioned, said in the same article in The Atlantic that Trump was like a poker player who believed his own bluffs. And there's some truth to that. He kept, through these negotiations, making these thunderous threats to Iran, and pretty soon people realized that they were empty. I think there's something in Kareem's comparison of these negotiations to the North Korea negotiations, where Trump said, we'll build you new hotels, there'll be great beaches, it'll be beautiful. And Kim Jong-un seemed to go along with it for a while, but in the end, there was nothing there because he wasn't fundamentally prepared to change his regime. The difference here, I've seen with my own eyes, is the Iranian people. The Iranian people hunger for change. Don't forget, there were tens of thousands in the streets risking their lives to protest this regime. The idea that there's permanent stability going forward after this deal, I think, is mistaken. The Iranian people still want something different. But the specific negotiating issues right now are ones that I just don't see the Trump team yet prepared to deal with. They need to focus on the technical details. They need something that actually will stabilize Lebanon so that you can begin to have real de-escalation. That's in everybody's interest. It may infringe Israeli freedom of maneuver, but the situation is not a good one for Israel. Israel's getting caught again, as it did in the 1980s, in an endless and, from Israel's standpoint, a ruinous war in Lebanon. So the idea of working on that problem isn't crazy. It's just that we haven't seen yet anything beyond declarations. Now, what the hell is a deconfliction mechanism, to be honest? Who knows? But so we need to move.
I was going to ask.
We need to move somehow to something real that people can describe, that Lebanese on the ground feel is real. It may be that President Trump is now drawn a red line of his own and said to Iran, if you continue to support Hezbollah in Lebanon after this deal that we're trying to put together in Geneva, I'll consider that a violation of the agreement and all bets are off and the sanctions go back on. If he did that, then you'd think there might be some teeth in this. So we'll have to see. That was one of his tweets over the weekend, and a significant one.
Well, I mean, there's so many tweets, and as the Iranians have learned, as we've all learned, his positions change by the day. It's important to remember, and this is something that David told us all. First of all, he said, Iran's not Venezuela. He said it repeatedly, don't go into Iran. Iran's not Venezuela. The second thing he said is, the Iranian government is teetering right now on the brink. Do not give them a second life with an American invasion. That's exactly what's happened here. And the idea that, Caddy and David were talking about the idea that maybe we could bribe them. We have to remember again, we're Americans, so maybe we only remember what happened yesterday at the U.S. Open or the World Cup. It's some pretty exciting games, weren't they? But what did the Iranians remember? We killed their leaders. We killed over 150 little girls at a girls' school. That's what they remember. They remember family members being tortured throughout the 60s and the 70s under the Shah of Iran, U.S.-backed Shah of Iran. They remember 1953 in Mossadegh, the United States, going in and overthrowing a government to put the Shah in power. That's what they remember. I'm not saying that to say America's terrible, America's bad. I'm just saying you may not remember that, and the Trump administration may not remember that, and members of Congress may not remember that, but the Iranians, they're never going to forget that. Imagine if all of America's leaders were killed, at the beginning of March. Would we go, yeah, give us a lot of money, we'll build condos and we'll change our ways? The idea that we can bribe the Iranians from being what the Iranians have been since 1979, from what the Iranians would say the United States made them from 1953 through 1979, the idea that we can bribe them, bribe the very people that I've called the leaders of a country that's been the epicenter of terrorism across the planet since 1979, they're going to change? If we give them enough money?
No, they're going to make.
They're not in it for the money. And again, they don't want wealth. They don't want an open society. Like Putin, they want more money to build their terror state, both internally and externally, like Xi, to build a terror state internally to keep people down. This is one thing, Mika, that your father always talked about. I remember we had a Pulitzer Prize winner coming on saying, oh, it's so terrible what America's doing in the Iraq War. Why, what do the Pakistanis think of us? And he goes, well, you fool. You fool, a Pulitzer Prize winner.
It was...
You remember, and your
Yeah.
dad said, we have got to get past this notion that everybody wants to be like us.
A lot of countries do, but
A lot of
not all of
countries do, and I guarantee you the majority of citizens,
Lately.
the majority of citizens in Iran want to be like us.
yeah.
The people running that government, the people we're negotiating with, want to keep the country exactly where it's been.